Thanks for joining us today, Joe. We've been talking a little bit about the Federal Reserve monetary policy. I've got a pretty quick question that I know you have an opinion on. Is Jerome Powell the worst Fed chair we've ever had, and why?
Well, first of all, I got an opinion on just about everything, but is he the worst we've ever had? Well, I don't think he's very good. And by the way, I know there are other people even within this firm who think he's actually done a pretty good job. And I will tell you that when he first came in, I thought, man, maybe he's not an economist. Maybe he'll be okay at this. But you know what? I didn't take into account that he's a lawyer, which means he negotiates. And I think he's negotiating with the politicians here is what it really boils down to. And I think he did that last year, and I think he's doing it now. I wouldn't say he's the worst. I mean, kind of universally agreed upon worst is Arthur Burns, who famously, now I talk about one that was infected by politics, man, he cut rates to get Nixon reelected. But if you go back and look at it, he actually hiked rates pretty good after the reelection in '72. So maybe he wasn't terrible. Listen, even Paul Volcker struggled when he first became Fed chairman. He didn't know what to do. He decided at the end, he tried targeting money supply, all these different things that didn't work. He finally just hiked rates until he killed the economy. He gets a lot of credit now for that. I don't know that he necessarily deserves it. I think he did exactly what Jerome Powell is going to do. He's going to kill the economy if he keeps going on this path. So is he the worst? Yeah, I don't know. He's not very good, put it that way. I don't want to label him the worst until we see where this goes.
I mean, well, we've also talked separately on some other topics like the Phillips Curve, where it just seems that he doesn't understand economic reality. The stuff that's been studied and basically been proven not to work. We've talked offline a little bit about his background, but it does seem that he doesn't quite understand what he's doing. And he's looking a lot of times at rearward-looking indicators, some of the wrong indicators. But I know you're not the biggest fan in terms of him being an intellectual giant when it comes to macroeconomics.
Well, that's true, but let's talk about the advice he's getting here. Look, you talk about bad Fed chairman. I think Janet Yellen was not very good. Janet Yellen was the one who, during her tenure, spent all of her time talking about the labor market. And you know what? She's a labor economist. Of course she talked about the labor market. It's in her wheelhouse. It's what she knew. So now she's Treasury Secretary. You think her and Jerome Powell aren't talking? You think that Phillips Curve stuff came straight from him? I don't think so. I think it came from Janet Yellen. And I think that she's wrong. And she was not a very good Fed chairman, and I don't think she's a very good Treasury Secretary, by the way. Not that the previous one was all that great either, by the way. As you know, I'm not a big fan of politicians in general, and I'm not a big fan of government economists who are nothing more than politicians. So yeah, not too crazy about that. But that's where I think he's getting the Phillips Curve stuff. I don't think he really, look, as far as I know, the man only ever took, micro and macro. I think it's the only economics courses he ever took. But I don't see that necessarily as a problem. I'm not an economist. I'm an engineer. I took no more economics classes than he has, although I will say I've spent 40 years studying the subject. Maybe I know a little bit. I did a lot of reading on my own, put it that way. I don't know.
Well, I also, when it comes to your engineering background, though, you ran nuclear reactors, so at least you tended not to do stupid things that made things blow up underwater. I mean, that seems to be not a characteristic that Powell shares. He seems to be willing to do stupid things that might cause things to blow up.
Well, that could be the source of my conservatism when it comes to policy. That may be true. There's differences though. Listen, in engineering, and on a submarine where I was, you had a procedure for everything. We actually had a written procedure for how to flush the toilet. And if you didn't follow it, it was not pretty. But anyway, engineering actually is in some ways, I think, a bad background to have for an investor. I think the background you really need is psychology. And I don't think Jerome Powell has much grasp of that either. He seems to be a really concrete guy. He doesn't seem to have a lot of insight into how other people think. But that's really what you need if you're going to be a good Fed chairman, if you're going to be a good investor. This is about human nature and human psychology and how humans react in crowds and all these different things. It's about psychology. And so I don't necessarily want to run him down because he doesn't have an economics degree. I think most economists are clueless anyway. I've said in the last piece that, they might. I would love to see, if we're going to put people out of work, let's put a bunch of economists out of work and let them wander around the country trying to figure out how the real world works. My guess is they won't be able to figure it out because they haven't done it yet. They certainly can't do it from their ivory tower. Maybe they could do it if they're out in the street, but I wouldn't even count on that. Listen, it is what it is, man. He is who he is. He's an attorney. He's going to act like one, and I think it's unfortunate.
So it does sound like in terms of worst Fed chair, it sounds like it's a very competitive running event. But to give the man his due, he's still in the race. I mean, he's got some time to work out his term. There's still a lot of stuff he can screw up.
Well, look, I'm an old-fashioned guy, and I would think it was it McChesney or somebody, I'm not sure exactly who it was, who said it was his job to take away the punch bowl just as the party got started. Yeah. Well, that's my guy. That's the guy I want. Jerome Powell, he spiked the punch, at 3 a.m. And it didn't turn out well, as those things usually don't. And now we've got a hangover. So, and I think he's the direct cause of it.